my grandparents. They could own a house and a summer house, have a car, 3 kids, and save money for the future on one income.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to afford a house. I don't know how I'm going to be able to put food on the table for my family because of the rising costs.
Inflation equals Great Depression or like great anxiety.
I don't believe inflation is going to stop.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's a treat. But the next day it's just breakfast.
Remember when you went out with only 5 pesos in your wallet?
Now, 1,000 pesos wouldn't buy 2 cartons of yogurt.
You end up begging for the government to provide you assistance.
It's so hard to find food, even if you have the money.
Inflation, it is like a fight in a war.
Hyperinflation is the cause of all of the major totalitarian regime development historically.
Out of the 237 fiat currencies, there has never been a single one that didn't die an early death in hyperinflation.
Civilizations have experienced this throughout time. It happens over and over again.
We are likely to have hyperinflation.
It's just a matter of when is it coming.
The only reason why things get more expensive is because money is being printed.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. As a central bank, we have the ability to create money.
And then government spends that money.
Why would anybody do that? To give government the economic power to enforce what they believe is right, which seems to be infinite wars.
We as a species devote enormous amounts of money to funding warfare.
You could not produce what the U.S. military-industrial complex produces if you didn't have the ability to print money.
To me, that's a horrific and disgusting aberration of human behavior, and I believe we can actually stop that from happening with Bitcoin.
People do not understand how profound this technology is by separating state and money.
Without the success of Bitcoin, financing war will continue, posing an existential threat to the entire species. The stakes are that high. I fear for my life, the lives of my loved ones, and the future of our species.
Yeah, I always thought about it as a horror movie, because some of the stuff is really bad. The first half is really scary. So yeah, I kind of got like a horror movie kind of inspiration.
Hello guys, welcome once again to Bitcoiner Podcast. Today is a very special episode. This is quite different, probably you have seen the intro. It's even different. And the reason why is because we're starting a new side project, Bitcoiner Podcast. You know that one of the ethos of Bitcoiner Podcast is to present the Bitcoiners that are working around the world in any other projects. That's why you see that we have plebs, we have educators, we have artists, we have politicians, we have policymakers, educators, anyone. Because the idea is to share the different perspectives and what is happening, not just in El Salvador, but around the world. And so how we're all connected, right? So for a long time, we have been discussing how to make this even better, to show you more cases and to provide you more valuable content in general. So one of the main partners that I have that they have supported me since the beginning is Bitcoin Film Fest. So we have been working, probably you have seen that I have had some artists, some filmmakers in the podcast, and it's because of them. They have helped me. Even them have come in the podcast in the past. So the idea, we have been brainstorming a lot how to make this work, and this is the first of many episodes that you will see probably once a month or once every 2 months. We haven't decided yet, but that's the idea. And the idea is to bring filmmakers, artists, because in the end, they are doing a really great job and they need a space to they have strong messages through the art. In the end, we know the film is the seventh art, and it's powerful. Visually, it's powerful, and sometimes it's more effective than just listening a podcast or reading a book. Because you have all the emotions in a single image, right? That's the beauty of the film. So today we have a special guest that is Shooter, and I want to read a quote from him. That says that supporting independent artists, I am one-man crew. I have spent 2 years planning, filming, and editing. No more inflation. That's the film that we're going to discuss today. And I even developed this website. I will post that. Your order helps me to continue doing what I love the most from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Michael, welcome. And Silali, welcome. You're the co-host today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe before we give a voice to Shooter, thank you very much, Juan. I would just say unfiat the culture. So I'm very happy that we can do this small collaboration. Hopefully, in the upcoming, let's say, sessions, it will be other rabbits from the Bitcoin Film Fest, so others from our small but very proactive team, and hopefully, many interesting independent filmmakers, because we need to give them voice and more space, and also bring what they are trying to bring more what they are trying to show to the world. So yeah, thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, guys,
Absolutely.
I'm really happy to be here. Glad to be on the first episode, and I'm glad that this podcast is more targeted towards El Salvador. El Salvador is actually a very important part of my journey. It's like really the reason why it's one of the steps on the way to making this film. Like if I didn't go to El Salvador and hear the El Salvadoran story and help tell that story through my 10-minute film, Comeback Country, likely, No More Inflation would not have been made. So yeah, El Salvador will always have a special place in my heart. And yeah, I'm proud to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure.
Savior, very interesting name, right? Of a country.
Yeah, I
I
taught that to Max Kaiser, actually.
Really? What did he tell you about that?
Well, because when I had gone, I had made these custom hats, and I was hoping to have the president sign them. And so on the hat, it was the El Salvador flag, and on top it said El Salvador, and on the bottom it said the Savior, right? That's how I had it translated. And so Max said, like, "Oh, that's a nice hat." He's like, "Is that what it means?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what it means, man." So, I speak a little bit of Spanish. I don't speak, my grammar is really bad. I can understand a lot, but I speak like a 5-year-old. So enough to get by and to eat food and stuff, but nothing crazy. So anyway, yeah, I'm proud to be the guy that taught Max that. And actually, Max is the one that gave me my name, Bitcoin Shooter, in El Zonte, on the beach there.
Wow.
Anyway, El Salvador is big part of my story for sure.
We're gonna figure out why more, because as I told you that before I started the podcast, one of the main things is that we love to know the person, right? So people will understand more probably after watching the podcast, or after watching the film, to know you better and why you do what you do, right? So I don't know. I always like to start, if you can share a little bit about your background, and then we'll start digging into this Bitcoin rabbit hole journey. Silali will also be a co-host, so she will jump sometimes to ask you questions. And so yeah, if you can share a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I started making like home movies with a friend when I was 8 years old, and then, got re-interested in it when I was like 13 or 14, and was making home movies, for family, and some business owners saw one of them, wanted me to make one for him, and I kind of kept going. And so, I've been making short films for businesses for 15 years. And then, as I mentioned, 3 years ago, I had gone to El Salvador for the first time with Max and Stacy when they had gone for the first time. And we filmed a few Geyser reports, and we filmed Bukele's Bitcoin bonds, whole little event thing there. And when I got back, I was really inspired to make a film about El Salvador, which I did, called Comeback Country. And you can find that on my YouTube channel. So if you go to nomoreinflation.com, you can, find my YouTube from there. And then, I created that film. Apparently, the president, Nayib Bukele, enjoyed it, and he retweeted it himself, and that created more attention in the Bitcoin space for me. And people encouraged me to plan a full-length film, and so that's what I did with No More Inflation. I knew I wanted to make it about Bitcoin because I really feel like Bitcoin is what the world needs most right now, and it's the most impactful thing that I could possibly work on in the world. And inflation just seemed like the absolute best segue into it, the most relatable problem that anyone around the world feels. And if you can actually present it and make them better understand that problem and understand that Bitcoin is a solution to that problem, then maybe that's the way into their hearts, you know? And so, like you're saying, films are great, I think, for catching people's attention, and then they can come to a podcast like this to get their 1,000 hours in, right? Because there's no way any film can communicate everything about Bitcoin. The best that it can do, I think, is just get someone interested enough in it to go down the same rabbit hole that we went down. And obviously, we're a testament to how rich the rabbit hole already is. Yeah, that's my history, and that's kind of a brief summary of what this latest project's about.
Really curious about something. You mentioned Geyser Report. Do you work for Geyser Report, or you were a collaborator with them?
So they didn't have, like, I guess, a set crew all the time. I think they had an agreement with RT or whoever it was to produce a certain number of episodes. They were able to procure their own crew, however that is, then as long as they're delivering those episodes, then they're fine. So anyways, it was just kind of like a, you know, one-off type of thing. So, but yeah, like, those episodes are probably still on Rumble. Yeah, they were really cool, man. Really cool to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was asking you because one of the first episodes that I watched about Bitcoin, it was in Geyser Report. And actually, it wasn't even for me. It was you too, really. And it was because of my dad. My dad, he was a huge fan of Max Geyser, and he used to send me, you know, a lot of videos. But sometimes there are like a lot, probably daily. And I was like, I won't watch, because, you know, I don't know if it happens, but when you get a lot of messages, like, I'll watch it later, and you never watch it. Until one day, I watched one, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pay attention about what he's saying. And I was like, damn, this is probably, it was the one thing that made me really realize about Bitcoin, pay attention about it. And then I just started my rabbit hole journey, right? So really interesting.
Same thing with me. Honestly, that's how my brother first introduced me to it and tripped me down the rabbit hole. But then I basically watched like every Geyser Report, every, you know, Orange Pill podcast that they used to do. So Max was the guy that, you know, I think it's a little bit of a character when he would get really angry and upset. You know, usually you're on TV, you need to get someone's attention, right? And so in person, he was always very calm, like completely different than what most people would think. But I resonated with that because I was learning about the problems of fiat for the first time. And I was angry too, you know, I'm like, how are you guys not angry? You know, like with all of this terrible things happening, you know? So it was perfect for me. So yeah, again, like, the universe, as soon as I started to really focus on Bitcoin, the universe just seemed to line things up for me. You know, like Max and Stacy happened to be the first people that I did anything for in the Bitcoin space. They introduced me to a lot of people that either ended up being in my film later or connected me to people on my film later or supported me making the film later. So, and you'll hear this from a lot of people, but a lot of people's first real touch and first good touch of Bitcoin, you know, comes from Max Geyser. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. You know, he's a tree that is like rooted very deep. He has a lot of branches off of his tree. So yeah, shout out to Max Geyser.
Shout out to him. Slali, would you like to add something?
Actually, I would like to ask a question related to people. Because one of the things I loved about your film, or I love still, amazing work, congratulations, is the fact that you invited not, first of all, same faces, because there are a couple of works in the space, longer, shorter, you know, it's like over and over again, like full respect, but more or less same people. So you invited like fresh, very intelligent, passionate Bitcoiners. But what I'm more interested in is people who might be respected and known by Bitcoiners, but not necessarily being associated with Bitcoin. Who I mean is Dr. Robert Malone, like very important people in my personal journey as well. Mikey Brook, Graham Hancock. So this is like really one of the huge kudos to you. Like when I was watching the film, I was really surprised and I said, wow, that's nice. But the question is what, let's say, triggered you or why you decided on such a step? Because as I said, maybe, and I expect quite many different Bitcoiners to know these people and respect them. On the other hand, they are not that closely, you know, associated with Bitcoin. I love that in the film they presented their expertise from their fields that is actually explaining what's the cause of inflation, which is amazing again, but what was the reason behind such a step?
Yeah, so the goal from the beginning was to make a film that could be on Netflix. That's the goal. I knew it was going to take a year or two of my life. And so if I was going to spend that much time doing it, the only way it would make sense, even potentially make sense, financially at least, is if it was on Netflix, like that big, if it was super desirable. And so part of that is, of course, you know, if you have well-known people in the film, it makes it easier for Netflix or HBO or Amazon or whomever to promote the film, right? So it adds value to the film. Now, of course, you don't want to just throw anybody in there, right? You want to, you want someone that makes sense for the story. And so as I was planning the film and identifying which topics I wanted to cover, when it came to health and COVID, I had Robert Malone at the top of the list. But it just turned out our interview didn't really go down that route very much. He wanted to talk more about hyperinflation and Weimar Germany. And, he has talked with some Bitcoiners. I don't think he's fully sold on it yet. He thinks we need some gold-backed crypto. And I haven't had the time to actually discuss that at length with him. But regardless, he is educated about inflation, and he knows that it's led to pretty much every totalitarian regime in history. And so that's just where our conversation went, and so anyway, but with Graham Hancock, Graham had wrote a book about foreign aid in 1989 called Lords of Poverty, which I was unaware of until I was doing the research for this film and was reading Alex Gladstein's book, Hidden Repression, and he cites Graham Hancock's book many times. And so Graham became, at the top of my list. And so anyway, for those guys, big names, big faces were in line with getting it on Netflix, having a really big reach. And again, the real main reason of getting it on Netflix is to reach as many normal people as possible. And that was another reason why I didn't worry too much about getting, like you were saying, the common popular faces in Bitcoin, because the average person doesn't really know any of these popular faces in Bitcoin, and at the same time, some people I would interview were kind of hesitant to interview because they would say, I don't know if I have the credentials to speak on this. And I'm like, I've talked to you for hours and hours and hours. I know you're super passionate about this. I know you read books. I know you've been doing your research, you don't need a college degree to be, the credential stuff is done, you just have ideas that that you've read, and then people can contest you against your ideas, not on, does this person study the history of war? So anyway, that gave me the freedom to not really push for all of those popular Bitcoiners and really to interview the people that I knew were passionate about and knowledgeable about a certain subject. And it was nice too, because I think things move in cycles. I can imagine as you become more popular in Bitcoin, more opportunities come your way. It's harder to actually sift through all the messages and everything that you get. And so it just turned out the people in my film happened to be people that were kind of gravitating towards me, or I would reach out once and they would reach back out really quickly. And so it was like they were ready for that opportunity. They were hungry for that opportunity. And so, yeah, it worked out perfectly. But yeah, to answer your question. And then, of course, outside of that, I just wanted to interview regular people because, again, my audience is regular people, just the average working person. And who are you going to relate with more than a fellow average working person? So those were kind of the three blends of types of interviews, really.
Yeah, amazing. One more thing that I like that you had, I think 2 or 3 times even different farmers, which is for me like really the base of the society, people who can provide us food. So anyways, yeah, I guess Juan might like to follow up on this, or he might have his own questions, but thanks, Shooter.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that you were mentioning that to make this film, you got inspired also with your previous film that it was Comeback Country, the 10 minutes film. So I actually want to know what inspired you to do that first film about El Salvador, because in that way I think we will have a broader perspective on why you decided to make the other film.
Yeah, I think and I don't know if I realized this before I started the El Salvador film, but like when sometimes my mind gets infected with something, and like it's hard to focus on other things because I feel the same thoughts like over and over again, circling in my head. I think what was inspiring about El Salvador was that I was hearing the same story over and over and over and over and over again. Every time I went down there, multiple people, while I'm waiting in line to get into the airplane, multiple people, like whoever's sitting next to me on the airplane, like, oh, I'm coming back for the first time in 20 years. Really. And everybody had crazy stories, crazy stories, whether it was about the Civil War or about gangs, like just horrific things that happened to them or their family or somebody they knew, like all different kinds of ways. Like it was kind of shocking. And then, but everybody, seemed like a bit hopeful because of Bukele. And so like you could tell like there was an energy there. There was like a sense of real hope. And I think in general, Salvadorans are very kind people. They like to talk to you anyway. So you kind of like you end up talking to a lot of people. So I think like then I came back and I was really looking at like, you know, the Civil War, and the US I think gave like $300 billion to the Salvadoran government because they were afraid that the guerrillas were going to take over and then it was going to become a communist country, and then Russia, you know, would like use it as a satellite country. And so that was their justification for funding the government. And then it just like, wow, my country did that. You know, like if they weren't sending that much money, the government would have had to negotiate with those rebels probably. And like, I'm not a communist, right? But like, I also don't think that most people would have given money for that. Taxpayers would have given money to pay for that. So I think it was a combination of all that, just knowing like, wow, these events had such a big impact that literally every single person that I've met, and even here in Los Angeles, every Salvadoran I've ever met always says, my parents moved here, you know, like whatever, in the 90s, you know. And now I know, I'm like, yeah, I know why, man. So anyway, I think just all of those stories, and then hearing like when people would say like, oh, like we can walk on the street at night, like that's a really big deal. Like we feel free. Again, it was just too much. It was just like, wow, there's so much pain and suffering that happened here. And now because of that, there's so much hope. And then that's multiplied by just millions of people. And so, yeah, I think that's really what inspired me. Or I think a better way to describe it is infected me. You know, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And it was something that I decided to do. And people would ask me like, how are you going to, you know, monetize this, or where are you going to distribute it? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. All I know is I need to make this thing, and I just need to make it the best I can possibly make it. And then we'll see what happens. And, you know, thank God it actually led me to making this next film. But yeah, I think really it was how deep the emotions were in the country, and multiplied by how many people had experienced that, was really what was inspiring.
Hey, Tomek just joined to the podcast.
Yeah, am I on? Hello, guys.
You're on.
Good to see you.
You too, man. I was hoping to see some pyramids, but it looks like it's dark now.
It's too dark for pyramids. But indeed, I'm in Egypt. I'm an Egyptian.
Are you cold?
Bedouin style today.
Nice. That's the way to do it.
That's a cool outfit.
Yeah. It's such a place where everybody wears, no, tourists wear those outfits, you know, not locals.
Yeah. So we were talking, Shooter was sharing with us his story when he was doing his film firm, The Comeback Country. He was telling us how it inspired him to do this second film of No More Inflation. So, yeah, we're just starting, man. So you just came right in time.
I believe Mike is also just starting with this. So judging on the way it grows so far, we can expect big cinema somewhere, you know, in few 100,000 blocks perhaps.
Yeah, and also judging, like after watching, looking at the quality of this film, also the previous one, The Passion, you know.
I did not watch yet No More Inflation, I must admit. But I already put it on a preliminary list for our team and for jury. We have it.
Yeah, but everyone who is listening, this is the task
right now.
That's my task list too. That's my next week task list. Before Christmas, it's like, how do you say, there is this period before Christmas that is happening now, like 40 days. Advent. I don't know, Adventum, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You make a resolution. My resolution is to finish my watch list for the film fest. So there is like 4 titles. I have time by Christmas, and that's my public pledge, I guess. Otherwise, I donate 100,000 sats to the next project of mine.
All right,
yeah,
I'll let you know when I have another project.
We can also later talk about possibly a new project, because from what you were saying, Shooter, it's like you have, first of all, you had this passion already as a kid and then a teenager, and yeah, some of the things from the universe just connected, you know, and then you were, in theory, given an opportunity that through your proof of work, you are where you are. But it's like really following some passion and something that is close to your heart. Even what you just said about the first short film, now we have the second one, which is very nicely expanding on all these, what you mentioned. Yeah, some governments are giving money to some countries, in theory, as the film is explaining, providing aid, help, but is it really a help? Then how this money is coming into circulation, printing, then it's what's this cause? Like, I don't want to reveal too much, neither of the film or like the money printing and inflation works, but I'm curious if there is already something growing in you for the next project. Do you have some energy, ideas, some kind of spark, or you just want to let it go however it goes and it lets you?
Yeah, it'll have to go however it goes, and I think a lot of it will be determined by the success of this film. Honestly, I can't think of anything more impactful or more relatable that I could possibly make than this one. And so, like, if this one doesn't reach far and wide, then I don't know what will. And so the universe will just have to bring it to me. You know, I mean, if somebody seriously was like saying, hey, you know, we have the funding and we want you to start thinking about what your next film is going to be, then I would spend probably more serious time. And I probably have a few ideas in my brain somewhere. But until then, it's not even a thought, right? Right now, really only half the battle is won. I think most of the work is done, but only half the battle is won with the film existing. What needs to happen next is a lot of people need to see it. I love it when Bitcoiners watch it. It's great. You support me and you support an independent artist and there's no platform in the middle. Like, all the money's coming right to me. It's super awesome. But really, you know, people can send me flowers once it's gone far and wide. And once they have people coming to them, talking to them, saying, hey, I saw this film on Netflix or on HBO or on Amazon, and I know you've been talking to me and trying to tell me about Bitcoin for so long, and now I really actually am interested and I would like for you to help me. Like, that's when, in my opinion, the goal is accomplished. So up until then, what it is it's doing more shows like this, taking every opportunity I can to promote the film, because eventually someone will see it that's connected somewhere that is going to help, you know, this get on a big platform. I mean, inflation isn't going anywhere and Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. So in my mind, it's just a matter of time before this goes far and wide. And then once that happens, I don't even know. I don't know what that's going to mean. I really don't know what opportunities that will bring. And so I'm not thinking too deeply about that yet, right? Just thinking about getting this thing out there. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
Absolutely makes sense.
I want to ask you what inspired you to focus on inflation? Well, I think you give just a hint that it's something that it's hitting us every single day, to all of us, right? You don't have to be a Bitcoiner to feel the inflation. It's something that is in there. But yeah, what inspired you to focus on this? And well, later I have another question.
Right. Yeah. So I think it was just from my own experience while talking to people about Bitcoin. Like, for example, if I wore a hat like this and I was at a grocery store and the cashier said, oh, hey, that Bitcoin thing, like, what is that, like a real thing? Like, what's that all about? Right. You know, you have 10 seconds to spend with them. So what are you going to tell them? Right. And eventually I realized that I would tell them, like, what if there was no more inflation? What if the price of everything stayed the same? Does that sound pretty good? Like, yeah, that sounds great. That's what Bitcoin is. And there's a lot of reasons why it is that. And you should look into that. And so I found that was just a very good entry point for people. That's what seemed to get their attention. And when I would talk to people about what kind of film I'm making, and I would say it's a Bitcoin film, they go, okay, you know, that's interesting. But as soon as I changed my thoughts on it and I thought, okay, no, I'm making an inflation film, everyone was interested. Everyone, no matter what age, no matter what occupation, no matter what. So I realized that's the way in. And then the progress of the film really is the natural conversation I would have with people, you know, and say, like, what if things keep getting more expensive? Like, what's going to happen? Like, you know, you're already going month to month. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Someone's going to come and save you? You know, look at what happens in these other countries as it gets worse, right? And they would always go like, well, why is this happening, right? I'd say it's just money printing. Really? Why do they keep printing it then, right? Like, okay, well, they're spending it on war. They're spending it on food to try to make it cheaper because of the inflation that the war is causing. They're spending it on foreign aid to get cheap goods because of the inflation that the war is causing, right? They're spending it on bailouts and COVID and all this stuff. And so I found that was just the natural line of questioning. And it also just perfectly segued into Bitcoin, because if all of this is simply due to money being printed, what if you have a money that can't be printed? And I think that's the perfect way in. And then, of course, people are going to have their common objections, right? The things that they've heard over and over again. So I knew that if you're going to mention Bitcoin, you have to cover the basic things that they think are bad about it in order to give them a fair shot. And so, yeah, that's kind of what led to inflation. It just seemed like that's what people were grabbing onto. And again, it would just perfectly fed into Bitcoin. Because again, once you understand, all this is just money printing, right? Like, Bitcoin is just such an obvious solution. So yeah, that's why I picked inflation.
Cuando dejas tus activos digitales en un exchange o en custodia de alguien más, te expones a riesgos de terceros no deseados. A diferencia del sistema bancario tradicional, Bitcoin te permite tomar el control total de tus fondos utilizando tus propias claves privadas. Esto te permite ser soberano y esencialmente tu propio banco. Al tomar el control de tus Bitcoins, puedes evitar riesgos innecesarios de terceros. Almacenar tus Bitcoin en custodia de terceros como los exchanges puede exponerte a ataques de actores malintencionados, gobiernos o estafadores que lo único que quieren es apoderarse de tu dinero. El proceso de autocustodia puede parecer abrumador al principio, pero afortunadamente Blockstream Jade Wallet hace que sea súper fácil custodiar tus activos. Las billeteras de hardware son dispositivos que almacenan de forma segura las claves privadas de tus bitcoins y activos de Liquid sin conexión a Internet. Las billeteras de hardware aumentan la seguridad de tu billetera porque tus claves privadas se almacenan en un dispositivo especializado que no está siempre conectado al Internet. Como te he dicho antes, mantener tus claves almacenadas en un dispositivo en línea puede exponerte a factores adicionales de ataque, por lo que se recomienda usar una billetera de hardware al almacenar grandes cantidades de Bitcoin durante largos periodos de tiempo. Jade es una billetera de hardware no custodial para Bitcoins y Liquid que ofrece opciones de firma simple y firmas múltiples. Yo personalmente lo utilizo para almacenar mis Bitcoins, ya que me siento mucho más seguro manteniendo mis Bitcoins en una billetera fría que en una almacenada, por ejemplo, en mi teléfono. Si estás pensando en adquirir uno para ti, no olvides utilizar el código de descuento de nuestro show, BitCorner Podcast. De esta forma estarás apoyando directamente el show y además obtendrás un 10% de descuento para la compra de tu billetera fría. Yeah, that's quite interesting. I talked about this with Jeff Booth, and he made this calculation that it says that right now we have a debt of 400 trillions. So it's insolvent, it's gone. The debt is gone, right? So to pay that, and I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I think he says that we pay the debt $1 per every second. It will take us 32,000 years to pay 1 trillion, but we have 400 trillion.
Yeah, and it's still growing. And this is also a very nice thing you included in the film at the beginning, especially I think it was Yoni and Seb talking about kids and families, some of the questions you were asking. One of the reasons, right, why we have in theory decline, let's say in societies, like less and less people. You have too much to worry, too much struggle, too much problems, financial problems, health problems, like all the time struggling. So why would you build a family? As Yoni said, it's better to have a cat or a plant, right? So in theory, this is also not helping in the long term. And all the kids that are getting born are already born in debt. So yeah, yes, Bitcoin fixes this if you understand why and yeah, you know how to use it as a tool, freedom.
And I think even like some people don't have kids at all because of finances, right? Some people have one kid and want a second one, but they feel they can't afford it. Or they have two and they want three. Like there's so many more people would have more children too if you weren't worried about, hey, can I actually afford it? What a crazy thought. I mean, I don't know if ever in history people were really thinking that, like, can I afford to have kids? Because I guess at a minimum you would at least have the basics. You'd have a roof and you'd have food, so you could always at least support them. But now people are struggling to even think about, can I provide a roof? Can I provide food? It's kind of insane, actually. Yeah, but I agree with you completely, of course.
Another thing that I want to add, without spoiling too much about your film, is that actually there was one interview that you were doing that actually it made me think about this, that it said something like inflation touched us, even to the babies, the ones that are not still born yet, because of the stress of the mother. I was like, damn, I've never thought about that. And it's quite true, right? The mother is super stressed and then it will affect the baby. So you're already touched by inflation without being born. It's crazy.
It's funny. He wrote a very nice book about it. So we can, I don't remember the title right now.
Broken Money.
Add it in the show notes. Again?
Broken Money.
Oh, yes, true.
No.
Broken.
Is that what it is?
No. Broken Money is Lynn Alden.
Hidden cost
Yes.
of money.
A hidden cost.
Sorry,
we can add it maybe in the show notes. But a question, Shooter. So how much, let's say, effort you had to spend before, like, preparing yourself to make this film? Because you traveled, I guess, a lot. Like, what was the story behind it? Did you, like you said that you spent 2 years working on this film. And how much of this time was the cost of, let's say, learning, reading, listening, connecting to people? Like, how much did you put into, preparing yourself?
Probably like 49% of the film was that. Thinking, writing, planning, writing. Right, like seriously, I don't know why, if it's just me, but I write the same thing over and over again for some reason. Like I feel like I don't want to go off of what I just wrote like a week ago. I want to come at it with a fresh brain, and I end up writing the same thing over again. I don't know, maybe that's how I distill thoughts in my brain. But you know, of course, like scheduling flights, booking hotels, finding interviewees, finding locations, scheduling all that, 49% of the film. 50% of the film is actually editing it, right? Taking what I have and chopping it and chopping it and chopping it and chopping it. 1% is actually like setting up equipment and filming. It's such a small part.
No way, but sorry, are you exaggerating, or is it actually 1% you would judge by the effort?
Dude, 1%. I mean, like, if
No
all
way.
the time I'm spending filming, it's like the least amount of time. I'm spending more time flying and researching and writing and editing. Like, it's such a small
Yeah,
percentage.
especially you are a one-man crew, right? Because maybe it's different if you have like more people to help, like some bigger crew.
Bitcoin shooters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I gotta make some kids maybe, and then I'll be running around with these guys, yeah, because again, like most of my interviews, probably the average interview is like 45 minutes long. And then maybe it takes me, 30 minutes to set up, 30 minutes to break it down. I'm always looking for places to film with lots of nice natural light. So I don't need to like bring a whole big old light set. So setup and takedown. So maybe on average, I spend an hour and a half on an interview. And some of them, I have them all lined up in the same place. So yeah, like literally, I think pretty much every of the 24 hours in the last 2 years was spent on this film, because like I'm always thinking about it, I'm always writing about it, I'm always doing something for it. And like even I have dreams about it, especially when I was deep in the editing process. Like I would dream about the scenes I was editing, and sometimes actually the solution to the editing solution would come from those too. So it was really like every hour of the last 24 hours. And I'm grateful for it, to be honest. Like, I don't know how many people could say they were able to carve out 2 years of their life to focus on one thing. So I'm not complaining whatsoever. It was absolutely a blessing. Like,
yeah, impressive.
I'm more content than I've ever been.
Impressive. So,
yeah, thank you.
And I hope that's why I asked this question, that people will be a little bit more, let's say, conscious as the audience, because sometimes, we can be a little bit careless. We watch something, and even if we are very deeply touched, we don't really think how much effort somebody spent to produce it, right? And we sometimes say, okay, proof of work as Bitcoiners, but maybe think, what's the outcome? So what's the result of this work, and how much energy and time somebody had to put into that? So yeah, this is a kind of like a side message as Bitcoin Film Fest. Appreciate filmmakers, especially independent filmmakers and independent creators.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if I was late to this topic, but what's next? Or is it haram? No more inflation too? Or I always like to ask, is there some fictional story that maybe comes somewhere in your head that that eventually you want, it's your magnum opus that is somewhere brewing? Or is this one?
Yeah, like I was mentioning a little earlier, I think the biggest thing is just the financial constraints of it all. So I'm not even really thinking about the next thing at all until there is a financial path to it. Again, whether that means this one's wildly successful and someone wants me to do another one, or it gives me the financial freedom to do it myself, or someone approaches me to make a certain project, then maybe. But otherwise, like, raising money is not easy, and it's not particularly fun. And so I'm not ready to do that again at this time. So, and again, it's important for me to spend my time getting this film out there. It's a very important film, and so that's really what I've been focusing on. Yeah.
All right.
So if you have some idea, then share the idea. People also love to hear them in podcasts or on stages anywhere. If they want to invest in some movie, it's nice to have their idea on plate.
Yeah. Okay, when I come up with it, I honestly, dude, I haven't even
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
about it. I mean, like, maybe it'll pop in my head briefly, and then I'm like, dude, don't even think about that right now, So, but yeah, good to know.
Guys, can I share screen? How do I do it? Chrome tab, window, and I want to do a CTA and show everybody that you can see it, right? At no more inflation.com. You can watch trailer if you are still not sure what you want to do. Okay, this internet is quite slow. You watch the trailer, and then regardless you do it or not, there is big button watch now, $10. You click it, you are redirected to Zaprite. You can pay with Lightning with 8% discount. So let's see if my Albi pops up, or Right. Okay, no more inflation. Now you have even your own QR code. Where am I?
Again, Colin, so this is really like a step forward to complete your list, like your 2024 resolutions.
Do you see the pop-up? Is the pop-up being shared?
No.
Okay, so sometimes when you do screen sharing, the pop-up is not shared.
So
Anyway, I got
maybe-
Albi popped up, and I paid 9,000 sats. Guys, it's just 9,000 sats for, how long is it, 2 hours?
That was quick.
Cheers.
No, 1 hour.
It won't
Cheers.
focus. There we go. I got my notification there.
Perfect.
Billing address, order received.
The
and
video
where
of
do I
Bitcoin,
watch
the
it?
video of Lightning.
Where is my
Yes.
film? Where is my movie?
You
Peer-to-peer
got
payment without third parties.
Yes, so exactly. Don't do that. Just let's show the trailer. You can
Where
watch
is it? Where do you, I want to
Email.
watch it tonight. It's in my email.
It's in your email.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I'll get it on email.
You got everything to your email or somewhere, so you can
I
do that
hope so.
later. Yeah, don't
That's
play
good.
with it.
Actually, I developed a thank you page that tells you that, but I just realized I'm not having it to redirect to that thank you page. So I'm going to have to fix
Yeah,
that.
where is my thank you page? No more inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
got,
no, it's
you got
awesome,
the
right?
thank
I
you
mean,
directly, from the brain behind the film. So this is nicer than just a thank you page, right?
exactly. Yeah, in person. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
awesome, man. I mean, like you're saying, the Lightning is so awesome. And, I let people pay with card because I want the normal people to be able to do it too. But when you pay Lightning, like, I'm getting all those sats, like 100% of those sats. It's for an artist. Like, you ask any other artist who's made any money on any other platform, 100% is crazy. I mean, even like 50% is crazy, right? You're probably used to like 40 or 30 or 20. So like, this is the way to do it. And I did this all myself. Like, Zaprite is super easy to use too. Like, it's super easy to connect it to your WordPress or your WooCommerce. Like, it's silly. And if you pay with a card, like I have everything enabled, like Apple Pay, Google Pay, Cash App Pay. Like, it's just like simple, and all that money can come to you. So yeah, it's pretty rad.
Here is your
That's amazing.
Anyway, Juan, do you have, because I guess you
Yeah.
might have some questions and we are close to 1 hour.
Yeah, we're gonna start wrap it up. I just want to ask you if you have like a couple more minutes just to start wrap it up.
Yeah.
Are you good, Shooter?
Yeah.
Are you
we
good,
got time.
Silali? You, Tomek?
About
Right.
what? Yes.
All right, so I have a couple
can
more
watch it.
questions. And one is that Silali asked you about the individuals, how you decided which to interview. But I want also to know, how do you decide which countries to go and film? What was the particular story that deeply resonate, and what story deeply resonate with you in the end?
Sure. So I wanted to show the different intensities of inflation, and the way I categorized them was single digit inflation,
Gotcha.
double digit inflation, triple digit inflation, quadruple digit inflation. So I was just looking for countries that fit those, and obviously Argentina was like almost everyone knows that there's been inflation in Argentina. And actually, fortunately, there was a lot of Venezuelans living in Argentina. So I was able to kind of capture both of those stories in the same place, which was awesome. Of course, I went to Jamaica for double digit inflation. So that's how I identified those countries. And then, of course, we touch on Weimar, Germany. I didn't actually go to Germany, but, again, that's in the quadruple digit inflation kind of category. And then when it comes to other places, it was either where the universe took me. Like, I wanted to interview a certain person, a Bitcoiner that was speaking at some event. So I decided to go there. And then while I'm going there, looking at other people that could possibly fit, in my plan for filming. And so sometimes the universe told me where to go, and sometimes I decided where to go. Like Kenya, for example, when I was looking for, maybe positive stories about Bitcoin mining, that was one that was circulating at the time about bringing, cheaper electricity to people in Africa for the first time. So I did my research, looked up the company, saw the CEO, Eric Herzman, was speaking at Bitcoin Miami in 22, I think, or maybe 3. Anyway, attended his talk, approached him afterwards saying, hey man, I love what you're doing. I'm making a film. I want to come out there and tell your story. When's good for you? And he just so happened to have some micro summit organized for September. And so the universe took me there in September. And so, yeah, that's kind of some of the countries, they were on the list because they were just perfect examples of the topics I wanted to cover. And sometimes they were just where people were that, again, I knew were passionate and knowledgeable about something that, I wanted the film to cover. So that's how I decided.
Yeah. And the other things that I wanted to know is that in all the interviews that you made, because as you say, there's different scales of inflation. There's any particular story that touch deeply about the consequences of the inflation in XYZ country of the person that you interviewed that just probably, we're not aware or conscious enough about, for example, the hyperinflation that is in Argentina until you're actually there, even to get some dollars, right? And they have like several types of dollars and you cannot buy it. You have to buy it with other persons. So I'm sure that you have a couple stories about that.
I think there is one that stood out, and I'll tell you about it. It actually didn't make the film, but it stands out regardless. I think the biggest thing was every country resonated with me because I could see the US kind of trending in that direction. Or if things keep getting more expensive, right, which they always do, then this is naturally what happens. And that was kind of what was really resonating. So like in Jamaica, for example, people are skipping meals, right? I mean, people would already be skipping meals here if there wasn't, I don't think Jamaica's got anything like that. So people literally cannot make enough money to eat. And so why wouldn't that happen in the US? Okay, maybe that won't happen, but now you're going to be the one that's receiving the food stamps and the welfare. And what kind of food are you even going to get for that? It's going to be low nutrient. And then Argentina, like one city or some cities, 80% of the people work for the government. And like we have a crazy amount of government employees in the US already too. So it's just like everything was kind of like, whoa, this is already happening in the US. And if the trend continues, the same trend that's been going on forever, then why wouldn't it go this way? But specifically, there was a woman I interviewed that I met in Kenya. The universe brought me to her. She lived in South Sudan. And she was there. She left Kenya to go to South Sudan for opportunity because there was no jobs in Kenya. And it was just before, I guess, their civil war in South Sudan. And so, the inflation causes the war too, because it makes life harder for people, right? And it makes people more like, hey, we need to do something about this. We need to do something radical, And then, of course, it pays for the armies to fight each other. So it was like the president versus like the main general or something, and they each had their own armies and they were constantly fighting.
And they also fight for the access to the printer.
There you go, right? And so she was talking about like going to bed and a bottle of water is like 2 South Sudanese pounds, and then you wake up and it's 5. And eventually people can't afford water. So they go drink the water out of the Nile, and then they get disease and they can't afford to go to the hospital. So then they start stealing and robbing and killing. And she's like, I don't condone it, but if your kids are crying because they're hungry or your parent is dying and you need to take them to the hospital, what are you going to do? Right? And so there's that angle of it, but then also just the war angle of it. Like she's saying the houses are made of basically like cardboard. So she would just lay under the bed all day long for weeks long with biscuits and water because you can't stand up or sit down because a bullet might come through at any time and hit you and bombs would be dropping. So it's like, without inflation, there would be much less war because most people don't want to fight, especially if you're doing okay. And if you're just able to handle your needs and you're actually able to save a little bit for the future and you can envision a better future, you don't want to fight. But when you're struggling, yeah, like you're much more willing to fight. Anyway, her story will always stick with me because I never imagined what it would be like to live through a situation like that. So yeah, so many stories. I mean, all of them have a place in my heart, but yeah, that one always jumps out at me.
Wow, that's interesting, like kind of painful, deep. I try to not to think about such topics too much because they are pretty depressing, but on the other hand, it is a reality. And what I like you highlighted is, it can happen in the US, so your home country. It can happen anywhere. Like people in the Western Hemisphere, they are generally feeling like more privileged. They think, oh, it's not me, it's not my country. Never say never, especially if you don't know what kind of mechanisms are behind the country that you are living. But just to what you mentioned, that there was an interesting story and it didn't make to the film. So are there any other parts that maybe one day you can just collect and produce some extra from it?
Yeah, so on my YouTube channel already, you can actually see this woman's interview that I was talking about from South Sudan. So yeah, I do plan on releasing like extended interviews from either people that are in the film or not in the film that just didn't quite make it. I mean, don't get me wrong, her story is super powerful. I just didn't have enough about South Sudan to tell the whole South Sudan story, and I couldn't commit to doing that. But anyway, yeah, I do plan on releasing all of these because, like, part of the film, I go to North Dakota to show Bitcoin mining off of flare gas, and I talked to HT or Hodl Tarantula, and his interview is just awesome. He says some things that are too hot for TV, and so it deserves his own little section. So I'm going to put those out there because there's so many stories within these things. Like in North Dakota, for example, the weather is really harsh out there, and it's very dangerous, the people that go out there and work. And the miners that are out there acknowledge that it is a sacrifice. They are sacrificing to be out there partly because they want to strengthen the network. They wouldn't be out there if Bitcoin didn't exist. And so that's a powerful story. It's just not the story that I was telling. So yeah, these things will be cut up eventually and get put out there, but lots of
so much good
stories
content, right? There is like also you learn a lot during doing this. It's not just film, but now you telling those stories. It's already something that I would love to listen. You can do events with this. You can maybe develop on these stories.
Exactly.
So much
and
more.
I think it's also like, there's many ways to the top, right? Like one good thing about inflation is that I can see myself speaking on, any podcast outside of Bitcoin, any podcast that thinks their viewers wants to know more about inflation or about Bitcoin. Not only is my film a great place to do that, but I have experienced it firsthand, right? And I have an interesting story myself too. So I think it's realistic. It's possible I could be on Joe Rogan. I could be on Lex Friedman. I could be on these things to talk about it because, again, the film is a story on its own, but also me as an independent filmmaker.
Joe, if you're listening to this, it's Bitcoin Shooter up on Twitter or on Nostr.
Yeah, there you go. So that's pretty cool, man.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to do the last round of questions. And then I'll let you go because probably you need to do more work. So Lali, if you want to do your final question for Shooter.
Yeah, so there are many different messages in the film, from hope to a little bit of like warnings as well, a lot of lessons to take. What would be your biggest message to share? Like one sentence wrap to the audience.
Right. I think the message is the one the film ends in, which is this is about taking personal responsibility. And how are you going to deal with the inflation that's coming and the civil unrest because of it? So if you want to depend on somebody else, if you want to hope that the government is going to be okay and they're going to take care of it and they're going to take care of you, fine. But if you think that might not happen, that they might not do a good job of doing that, then you need to take responsibility for yourself. So yeah, I think anybody who wants to do that, they should learn about Bitcoin. And if it's not worth their time to do it, then basically they're saying that they're willing to let someone else take care of them. So I think that's the biggest message, is just personal responsibility. And even for the Bitcoiners out there too, if you're already stacking sats and you got the financial angle nailed down, maybe you want to start focusing on your independent food, your independent shelter, your independent energy. Make yourself stronger so you rely on less people so that you can go through whatever transition is happening better, but also you can be a stronghold to take care of other people. That's really why I made this film. I want to reach as many people as possible. I want to have the Bitcoin wealth distributed is among as many people as possible, because those are going to be the strong people during whatever transition is happening. And the more strong people we have, the smoother the transition is going to be. So it's kind of a selfish reason, because I want myself and my kids to have a smooth transition as possible. But in order to do that, everybody has to. The more people are better, the better it is for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really the message. Is
beautiful message. And to all the Bitcoiners, by the way, so we're recording, as we were joking, 12/12/2024, the magic of numbers. But 12th of December is an official backup day. So even many Bitcoiners or people who just have Bitcoin, first of all, don't keep it on an exchange. Second, think about the backup plan, take care of your keys. This is the first step. Then you can go into other parts as taking care of your health, family, education, happiness, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but beautiful message. Thank you.
Tomek, you'll have the final word. We're gonna end with you.
I have a final question. I don't have much to say. I have a lot to learn.
But hold on, because I'm going and you'll wrap it up. You'll finish because you have to tell the audience why you jump in the middle of the interview. My question is not that related to the audience. I think it's quite interesting for any filmmakers that are doing it. or probably just curious for people. What is you mentioned that you wanted to reach to also be on Netflix and or HBO, but what is actually the process to actually go there? Is like you as a filmmaker to put your movies there? Is there like a submission form or a paper to fill? I don't know. What is the process to go there?
There is no process. They don't have a process that is open to the public in terms of those guys. The only one that does is Angel Studios. Angel Studios, you can pay to submit. They'll show it to their paid audience, and the paid audience is the one apparently that votes on every single project that they do. So they do it that way. Otherwise, with Netflix or them, you have to know somebody who's worked with them before. There's like gatekeepers, basically. So that's why I think the path to get on those big platforms is to do more shows like this, to at least make all the Bitcoiners first aware of the film, because they're going to be the ones that are most excited about it first, and see what connections there are there, right? I mean, I can't imagine there must be a Bitcoiner in one of these companies, or know somebody who's in one of these companies, or something. So again, I think that's the way to really do it, is you create your film, you get as many people possible to see it until, the right person sees it. Of course, Graham Hancock's in my film. He's seen the film. He's happy with the film. I've expressed interest in being on Netflix, but those are the kinds of things that you don't really push for, right? Like if he wants to, he will do that, right? And he's been on Joe Rogan multiple times. So again, right, like I could say, hey, Graham, would you please send this to Joe Rogan? But I feel like it's just something that he would do, if and when the time is right. And maybe when Bitcoin goes to $150,000, that's when he thinks it's right, or when, whatever, some crazy money printing event, the next one happens. So it's just a matter of time. But I don't know. I've never worked with them before. So I think if you haven't either, you just kind of got to make some noise. You got to make enough noise to get their attention.
Absolutely. Shout out to AGL Studio, because what they're doing is also great. And I love also their voting system with what you mentioned, the audience vote which ones to support. And they're doing a great job, like being Trojan horses, even with the Turtle Twins, making this show for kids and for everyone. So it's amazing. So yeah, Tomek, the stage is yours. So make your final questions.
I wanted to ask Mike if we see you and number inflation in Warsaw, but that's not my question, because that would be a rhetorical question. And my actual question to you is, what movie would you like to be done? Maybe not you, somebody else. If you had like resources, is not a problem. What film would you want to produce with this money?
I think it would either be, if it's Bitcoin related, it would either be about like all of these scaling solutions that are being talked about right now, like CTV or I don't know enough about them.
This answer. Nice. Okay, surprise.
Or maybe like a deeper dive into crypto versus Bitcoin, because I feel like a lot of people will get stuck there, and a lot of people are already stuck there. I think that would be very helpful. And then again, like in the future, I'm not a programmer, but I think that we need some type of scaling solution, because at any point we need to be able to make a run on, if you can't, obviously not all of us will be able to hold our coins on chain eventually. There's not enough room for all of us. So if it's going to be over Lightning, I like Blink, I like these things, but there has to be a method in which we can make a run on any particular bank. I consider these banks. Blink is a bank. A Lightning node is a bank. We have to be able to make a run on the bank to take custody of our sats in some way. If not, and we can't settle on chain, like, I don't know how we could protect ourselves. That's my non-programmer thought. So I know a lot of these developers, when they're working on these solutions, I think that's the real goal, is they're trying to develop a mechanism where we can take custody somehow, some way, and actually be able to run on a bank. So I think that's important. I think so. So maybe that's what it would be about. Either one of those.
Don't run on Blink.
Don't run on Blink. Yeah, well, Blink has its purpose. It's great. I mean, like, if you have too much money on Blink, then you can, settle it on chain. And I know even in Berlin, people who have Blink, they're starting to play with liquid Bitcoin also, so that they don't have it in that kind of custody. It's a little more decentralized custody. They have stable sats, so you can keep it in dollars. But, Blink works amazing.
And it's also good to have like a couple of wallets. If Tomek, you're now again referring to the Bees wallets, which are also amazing.
I mean, what Bees wallets? Shooter, if you will be doing this scaling film, we can talk about some product placement bees, honey.
Yeah, and then
But you see,
about the
this
film
is very
fest. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I wanted just to say that it's very interesting what you mentioned, because sometimes we are discussing within the Bitcoin Film Fest whether we need more movies, films about Bitcoin, or maybe not. Maybe one day there will be no topic about Bitcoin. It will be just like films that are funded through Bitcoin. So, like how naturally it will change. But I also once somewhere mentioned that there will always be topics that you can make a film about Bitcoin, not mentioning Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin, again, explaining kind of this basic story, but yeah, getting into some specific direction, some kind of niche. So fingers crossed for somebody making this kind of more technical, but still in a digestible way.
If someone else can find another entry point, like for example, when I'm targeting the normie, inflation is what I think. I don't know if there's anything really more impactful that I could target. Now that I'm done with that, if I was going to focus on another film, it would probably be focusing on something on the next step of their journey,
Lightning
right?
Network, open source, browser extension, this type of things.
Right. Or again, crypto versus Bitcoin, because maybe they see my film like, oh, I'm interested, right? But my film covers Bitcoin versus crypto a little bit, but not in too much detail. So maybe some of the people will get interested in Bitcoin and start fucking around with shitcoins. And I'm like, well, now I got to make a shitcoin film, to help make sure I fill the next step in that process, So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Regarding the film fest, I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it out, but I would be more than happy for you guys to show the film. I know, I've been wanting to have you guys show some of my other work. It's just been like juggling all this whole project and trying to do that's been a little cumbersome.
Well,
but I really
hope you
appreciate
still
what
can
you
find
guys are
some
doing.
time. There will be an option to meet HBO. We are in touch already with HBO Poland because of their Money Electric, right? They have this documentary which also somebody suggested to have, so we need to consider. So maybe that would be also an option. If guys are reminding that the Bitcoin Film Fest 25 is scheduled to be on May 22 to May 25 in Warsaw, Poland again, in Palace of Culture, the best venue for a festival and actually the best time for the film festival. We have quite a competition at the same weekend. There is a Cannes Film Festival finale, so that's why maybe Shooter cannot make it. But maybe it's not that far. You can jump into Warsaw, and whoever is around, please feel invited. We do a nice event over there, May 22-25.
Absolutely.
And hope to see Mike and Juan in Salvador.
And Juan, of course.
I'll do my best. But yeah, hopefully I will be there. Shooter, thank you so much for your time to spend time with us. Silali, Tomek, again, great co-host. We'll have more co-hosts in the future, not just Silali, not just Tomek, but to all the crew from Bitcoin Film Fest, and great filmmakers like Shooter. Support him, buy his movie. You have seen that Tomek buy it in less than a minute, and the payment is not in a bank account. It was peer-to-peer. It's his money now. So yeah, choose whatever wallet that you want. Alvi, Blink. Yeah, those are great. And what else should I say? Yeah, stay tuned for future episodes. We are going to do it once in a month or maybe once every 2 months. I hope you like it. Please leave a comment if you like it. Who you want to be the next guest? Suggestions to all. Follow Bitcoin Film Fest. They also have their YouTube channels and the Twitter. Support Shooter. He also have a YouTube channel, and he mentioned that. And he also mentioned that has the extended interviews. Watch the film, for real. It's a good film. Yeah, just thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao, thank you.
Thank you.
I was just showing because you were like, do this.